For the last time, Glornak, we are not interfering with their development. Period. Commander Vrixel slammed his upper appendage onto the command console with enough force to make the holographic displays flicker. His exoskeleton plates shifted to a deep purple, the Centaurian equivalent of a human turning red with frustration. Glornak, the ship's xenobiologist, wasn't backing down. His eye stalks swiveled in what his crewmates recognized as stubbornness. But Commander, they're killing their own planet. Their atmospheric carbon levels are— I know exactly what their carbon levels are, Vrixel interrupted, his secondary breathing vents flaring. I can read the same reports you can. That doesn't change Galactic Protocol 5721B. Science Officer Tila, who had been quietly analyzing data in the corner of the bridge, chimed in. The Prime Directive, as these humans might call it if they had any idea we existed. Her voice contained that particular lilt that everyone aboard the observation vessel Distant Whisper recognized as amusement. They have actually coined that term in their entertainment media, communications specialist Drav noted, looking up from a station where he monitored thousands of Earth broadcasts simultaneously. It's from a fictional space exploration series they are quite fond of. Vrixel's plates shifted to a lighter shade. See? They are imagining rules they'd want advanced species to follow before they have even achieved deep space travel. That shows promising wisdom, or it shows they know exactly how badly they'd mess things up if a more advanced civilization contacted them. Glornak muttered, his tentacles coiling tightly around his datapad. The Distant Whisper had been stationed in Earth's orbit for nearly 3 decades now, cloaked with technology that bent light, gravity, and all known detection methods around their vessel. Their mission was simple: observe humanity's development and determine if the species was ready for contact and potential invitation into the Galactic Cooperative of Sentient Species, SOFAR. The answer had been a resounding not yet. Commander, Tila said, her voice dropping its earlier amusement. The latest analysis suggests their environmental situation has deteriorated further. Ecological collapse scenarios have shifted from possible to probable within the next century. Vrixel's plates darken again, and yet they continue to argue about whether it's even happening. Some of them argue, Drav corrected. Others are quite passionate about fixing it. They are just politically deadlocked. Politics, Vrixel spat the word like it left a bad taste in his speech membranes. The universal disease of emerging intelligences. A soft chime interrupted their discussion. Excuse me, said the ship's AI in its pleasant, gender-neutral voice. But I have detected something unusual occurring in the Northern Hemisphere, specifically within the human nation-state designated as Canada. The main view screen shifted to display a remote area of Canadian wilderness. At first, nothing seemed amiss, just trees, a small clearing, and a lone human dwelling. Then they saw it. A faint blue glow emanating from what appeared to be a crude workshop adjacent to the house. Enhancing, the AI said as the image zoomed and clarified. Inside the workshop, a human male, middle-aged by their standards, with what they'd learned was called a salt and pepper beard, was bent over a workbench. But it wasn't the human that caught their attention. That IT was what hovered above the workbench. Is that? Glornak's voice trailed off. A gravitational displacement field, Tila finished, her normally composed demeanor cracking. But that's impossible. They are centuries away from that technology. Vrixel leaned forward, his 4 eyes narrowing. Drav, who is this human? Drav's appendages flew over his console, accessing their digital identity networks now. His name is Franklin Porter, age 58, former physicist at something called CERN, retired 8 years ago after the death of his wife, has largely withdrawn from human society, and he's just casually inventing gravity manipulation in his shed. Glornak's voice had risen nearly an octave. It appears so, the AI confirmed. And based on my analysis of the equipment visible, he's using principles that suggest he may have independently discovered the unified field theory. The bridge fell silent in the Galactic Cooperative. The discovery of unified field theory was considered the watershed moment for any species, the point at which they either rapidly advanced or destroyed themselves. It was typically a planetary effort involving thousands of scientists, not something a reclusive human did in his workshop. This changes things, Vrixel finally said. Does it? Tila asked. One human's discovery doesn't mean the species is ready. No, but it means they are closer than we thought. Vrixel straightened his posture. We need more information. Drav, continue monitoring all communications related to this Porter human. Tila, I want a full analysis of that device he's building. Glornak, prepare a first contact protocol. Glornak's eye stalks straightened in shock. You can't be serious. I'm not authorizing contact, Vrixel clarified. I'm saying be prepared. If this human actually succeeds and creates functional gravity technology, the timeline changes dramatically. And what if he shares this knowledge? Glornak pressed. Their species is still mired in nationalism, religious conflicts, and economic disparity. They'd weaponize it within months. We don't know that, Tila countered. Don't we? Glornak gestured toward the view screen. Look at their history. Every major scientific breakthrough has been weaponized. Nuclear fission, bombs, the internet, psychological warfare and surveillance, genetic engineering, biological weapons research. Vrixel cut him off. That's enough. We are getting ahead of ourselves. For now, we observe. Nothing more. The tension on the bridge remained palpable as they watched Franklin Porter work. The human seemed completely oblivious to the fact that his tinkering had captured the attention of an advanced alien civilization. For several hours, they observed in silence as Porter adjusted components and took measurements. Occasionally, he would mutter to himself, and Drav would provide real-time translations. Fascinating, Drav remarked. He keeps referring to something called Wheeler's Dream. I'm searching their knowledge repositories now. John Wheeler was a 20th century physicist who believed that information was the fundamental building block of reality. If from bit was his saying, he's not far off, Tila noted. Though the Glixomut-Ishans would argue it's more from kbit. Porter suddenly jumped back as the blue glow intensified, forming a perfect sphere about 30 centimeters in diameter. He's done it, Tila whispered, her voice a mixture of awe and concern. That's a stable microgravity field. Porter was beaming, his wrinkled face transformed by joy. He reached for a small object, a screwdriver, and placed it near the sphere. It floated, perfectly suspended. Containment appears stable, the AI reported, though his power source is incredibly inefficient. Of course it is, Glornak snorted. He's probably using their primitive fission-based electrical grid. Porter carefully adjusted something on his control panel, and the sphere expanded slightly. The screwdriver began to move in a slow orbit around the center. He's creating a controlled gravitational vortex, Tila said, unable to mask her professional admiration. With garage tools. That's actually remarkable. Commander, Drav suddenly interrupted, his tone urgent. I'm detecting a power surge in the local electrical grid. It's feeding back into Porter's workshop. On screen, they could see lights in the main house flickering. Porter hadn't noticed yet, still focused on his miraculous creation. The field is destabilizing, the AI warned. Gravitational containment failing in approximately 20 seconds. Vrixel rose from his command chair. If that field collapses without proper containment, it will create a localized gravitational implosion, Tila finished. Nothing catastrophic on planetary scale, but Porter and everything within 100 meters will be crushed to atomic density, Glornak said flatly. They watched in horror as Porter finally noticed something was wrong. He frantically began adjusting controls, but it was clear he didn't understand the forces he had unleashed. 15 seconds to implosion, the AI updated. We have to do something, Glornak exclaimed. Glornak, the Prime Directive, Vrixel began. Hang the directive. Glornak's tentacles were practically tying themselves in knots. This human just independently discovered gravitational manipulation. Do you know how rare that is? The statistical likelihood of another human achieving this within the next century is infinitesimal. 10 seconds, the AI intoned calmly. Porter was backing away from his creation now, fear evident on his face as the blue sphere began to pulse ominously. "Commander," Tila said quietly, "Glornak isn't wrong. This human represents an evolutionary leap in their scientific understanding." 5 seconds. Vrixel's plates shifted through a rainbow of colors as he struggled with the decision. "Commander," Drav prompted. For seconds, Vrixel slammed his appendage down again. "Activate emergency transport. Get him out of there." 3 seconds. "Transporter locked," the AI confirmed. 2 seconds. "Emergency protocol authorized." Vrixel shouted, "Transport now." 1 second. A beam of white light shot down from the distant whisperer, passing through the workshop roof, as if it weren't there. It engulfed the startled porter just as the blue sphere collapsed in on itself. In the spaceporter it occupied a millisecond earlier, reality seemed to fold. The implosion created a momentary black pinprick that consumed the workbench, parts of the floor, and all of Porter's equipment before winking out of existence. Then on the bridge of the distant whisper, alarms blared. "Transport complete," the AI announced. "The human porter is in Quarantine Bay 3. "What have we done?" Tila whispered. "Saved a remarkable mind," Glornak said firmly. "Violated our most sacred protocol," Vrixel corrected, though his tone carried no regret. "And potentially altered the development path of an entire species. Only if we return him," Drav pointed out. "Otherwise, it simply appears that a reclusive former physicist had an accident in his workshop. Their authorities will find a small, unexplained crater and assume it was some kind of chemical explosion." The 4 aliens looked at each other, the weight of their decision settling around them. "We can't keep him," Vrixel finally said. "We can't return him either," Glornak countered. "Not now. He's seen our technology." "Actually," the AI interjected, "the human is currently unconscious. The emergency transport protocol includes an automated neural suppression field to prevent trauma during unexpected materialization. So he doesn't know what happened," Tila concluded. "Not yet," the AI confirmed. Vrixel paced the bridge, his exoskeleton shifting between shades of concern. "The damage is done. We have intervened. Now we need to decide what happens next." "I'd like to point out," Drav said carefully, "that this may actually represent an opportunity." All eyes turned to him. "Opportunity?" Vrixel echoed. "Yes. We have been debating for years whether humanity is ready for contact. Now we have a human aboard, one who is already pushing the boundaries of their science. We could test him." "Test him how?" Glornak asked, suddenly intrigued. "See how he reacts to us, to our technology, to the knowledge that his species isn't alone," Drav explained. "It will be a controlled experiment with minimal risk. If he proves mentally flexible enough to handle it, perhaps that suggests humanity has more potential than we have given them credit for." Vrixel's plates settled into a thoughtful blue hue. "And if he reacts poorly, memory alteration before return," Tila suggested. "Standard protocol for accidental exposures." "This wasn't accidental," Vrixel reminded her. "We made a choice. A choice to save a life," Glornak insisted. "A choice that violated our directive," Vrixel countered. "But Drav's suggestion has merit. A controlled test case could provide valuable data." The ship suddenly shuddered slightly. "What was that?" Vrixel demanded. "Gravitational aftershock from the implosion," the AI explained. "Minor, but it affected our cloaking field momentarily." "Were we exposed?" Tila asked sharply. "Checking Earth monitoring systems," Drav reported, working his console. "It appears, yes, we were. Their primitive orbital monitoring detected an anomaly for approximately 1.3 seconds. That's too short for them to get any meaningful data," Tila said, relieved. "Under normal circumstances, yes," Drav agreed. But what?" Vrixel prompted. "The anomaly occurred directly above the location of Porter's workshop, immediately after an unexplained explosion. Their military organizations are already correlating the events." The bridge fell silent again. "So not only did we save one of their scientists," Glornak summarized, "but we also just confirmed to their governments that aliens exist." "Not confirmed," Tila corrected. They have unexplained phenomena. That's all, which is more than they had an hour ago, Vrixel said grimly. This situation has become significantly more complicated. A new alert sounded. The human porter is regaining consciousness, the AI announced. Vrixel straightened his posture. It seems our decision has been made for us. Glornak, you have been advocating for contact. You will handle the initial interaction. Glornak's eye stalks quivered with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Me? But I'm not trained in first contact protocols. None of us are, Vrixel said dryly. That's what happens when you violate directives. Tila, prepare a briefing package, something that won't overwhelm him. Drav, continue monitoring Earth communications. I want to know how their authorities are responding to both the workshop incident and the cloaking failure. As his crew rushed to their tasks, Vrixel gazed at the view screen, now showing the slowly rotating Earth below them. And may the cosmic consciousness help us if we have just started an interstellar incident. He murmured to himself that in Quarantine Bay 3, Franklin Porter opened his eyes to a world that would change everything he thought he knew about the universe. And several kilometers below, in what remained of his workshop, the first government vehicles were already arriving at the scene. Franklin Porter's first coherent thought upon awakening was that he must be dead. The lighting was too perfect, diffuse yet bright, with no visible source. The air tasted clean in a way he'd never experienced, like each breath delivered pure oxygen without the usual terrestrial pollutants. And the surface beneath him, it wasn't quite soft, wasn't quite firm, but somehow perfectly supportive. Heaven's rather minimalist, he muttered, taking in the featureless white room. Actually, Mr. Porter, you are approximately 412 kilometers above Earth's surface. Franklin bolted upright at the voice, which seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously, and immediately regretted it as vertigo washed over him. Careful, the voice cautioned. Your vestibular system is still adjusting to our gravity settings. Franklin closed his eyes and gripped the edges of what he now realized was some kind of examination table. Who are you? Where am I? My name is quite unpronounceable in your language, but you may call me Glornak. I'm the xenobiologist aboard this vessel. As for where you are, well, that's complicated. Franklin opened his eyes, searching for the speaker. Show yourself. A door he hadn't noticed before, perfectly blended with the wall, slid open. What stepped through made Franklin's jaw drop. IT wasn't the tentacles, though those were certainly attention-grabbing. It wasn't the exoskeleton, shimmering with iridescent blues and greens. It wasn't even the four eye stalks that moved independently of each other. It was the casual way the creature carried itself. Like meeting a human was routine, even boring. You are an alien, Franklin whispered. I prefer non-terrestrial sentient, but yes, by your standards, I am an alien. Glornak moved closer, tentacles slightly raised in what Franklin would later learn was a non-threatening posture. And you, Franklin Porter, are the first human to make official contact with the Galactic Cooperative of Sentient Species. Franklin stared, his brilliant mind racing to process this paradigm shift. Why me? Because of my gravity experiment. Precisely. Quite impressive work, by the way. Using quantum entanglement principles to manipulate gravitational fields is a significant breakthrough. Of course, your power source was woefully inadequate, and your containment algorithms needed refinement. But wait, Franklin interrupted, his scientific curiosity momentarily overriding his shock. You understand my work? Glornak's eye stalks performed what might have been the alien equivalent of an eye roll. Mr. Porter, we mastered gravitational engineering 8,000 years ago. Your particular approach was nostalgic. Before Franklin could respond to this casual dismissal of his life's work, the door slid open again. Another alien entered, this one taller, with darker plating and a more rigid posture. I am Commander Vrixel, the newcomer announced. Captain of the observation vessel, distant whisper. And you, Franklin Porter, have created quite a situation. Franklin swung his legs off the table, testing his ability to stand. Gravity felt slightly off, lighter than Earth, but not dramatically so. What kind of situation? The kind where we have violated our primary directive by bringing you aboard, Vrixel replied bluntly. You were moments away from being crushed by your own creation. We intervened. You saved me, Franklin said slowly, memories of the blue sphere collapsing flooding back. Yes, and in doing so, revealed our existence not only to you, but potentially to your entire planet. Franklin's eyes widened. What do you mean? A new voice joined the conversation as the door admitted a third alien. This one more slender and featuring a surprisingly elegant carapace with subtle patterns etched into it. Our cloaking field faltered during your rescue, this alien explained. Earth's orbital monitoring systems detected us briefly, and the gravitational implosion at your workshop has drawn significant attention from your authorities. This is Science Officer Tila, Vrixel introduced. She's been studying your work. Franklin nodded absently, his mind still trying to process everything. So what happens now? The three aliens exchanged looks, or at least their eye stalks moved in ways that suggested they were looking at each other. That, said Vrixel, is the multi-trillion credit question. Back on Earth, Brigadier General Amara Wilson stared at the satellite images displayed on the screens before her. 27 years in the United States Space Force had not prepared her for this. Run it again, she ordered, her voice calm despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Lieutenant Patel nodded. Yes, ma'am. The sequence played once more, a perfectly ordinary patch of atmosphere above northern Canada, then a brief shimmer lasting exactly 1.3 seconds, then back to normal. Except it wasn't normal. The analytical software highlighted subtle gravitational anomalies persisting in the area. And this coincides exactly with the Porter incident. Wilson confirmed. To the millisecond, Major Takahashi replied, pulling up a split-screen comparison. At 17:42 and 6 seconds Universal Time coordinated, Porter's workshop experienced what initial reports called an explosion. At the exact same time, our satellites detected this anomaly directly overhead. Wilson's eyes narrowed. What do we know about Porter? Franklin Porter, 58, former CERN physicist specializing in quantum mechanics. Takahashi read from his tablet. Retired 8 years ago after his wife died. Been living as something of a hermit in rural Canada. Still publishes occasionally in obscure journals, mostly theoretical papers that mainstream physics considers fringe. Fringe how? Unified field theory stuff. Gravity manipulation. The kind of papers that get you politely shown the door at serious institutions. Wilson nodded slowly. And now his workshop is a smoking crater. And something flickered into existence 400 kilometers above it at the exact same moment. She took a deep breath. Give me the president. On the distant whisper, Franklin Porter was getting the tour of a lifetime. This is our observation deck, Drav explained, leading Franklin into a large, circular room. One wall was entirely transparent, offering a breathtaking view of Earth below. Franklin approached it, mesmerized. It's so beautiful, he whispered. All those years of looking up at the stars, and now you are among them, Drav finished. Though technically, we are still in Earth's orbit. Franklin turned to his alien guide. How long have you been watching us? This particular mission has been active for 29 of your years, Drav replied. But the cooperative has been monitoring Earth since your species began using radio waves. You became interesting then. And what have you concluded? Drav's communication appendages twitched in what Franklin was beginning to recognize as discomfort. That's complicated. Let me guess, Franklin said, surprising himself with a bitter laugh. We are too violent, too primitive, too driven by greed and petty nationalism. Actually, came Vrixel's voice as the commander entered the observation deck. That's precisely what we are debating. Franklin turned to face him. Debating what? Whether humanity is ready for contact. Vrixel moved to stand beside Franklin at the viewport. The cooperative has strict protocols about introducing ourselves to developing species. The consequences of premature contact can be devastating. You're worried we will what? Freak out? Start a war? Or are you worried we will contaminate your perfect galactic society? Franklin couldn't keep the edge from his voice. Neither, Vrixel said simply. We are worried about you. Franklin's anger deflated slightly. Us? Why? Because 93% of species that receive contact before they are ready experience catastrophic cultural collapse within a century, Tila said, joining them with Glornak close behind. Your religions, your philosophies, your social structures, all built on the assumption that you are alone in the universe. How many of those would survive the truth? Franklin considered this, but some would adapt. Some of us would welcome the knowledge. Some, yes, Glornak agreed. But enough? Your species still wages war over differences in skin pigmentation and which invisible deity to worship. How would you handle differences measured in tentacles and exoskeletons? Franklin had no immediate answer, and that's not even addressing the technological implications. Tila continued. Your world already struggles with equitable distribution of resources and technology. What happens when we introduce concepts thousands of years beyond your current understanding? You don't think very highly of us, do you? Franklin asked quietly. On the contrary, Vrixel said, we find humanity fascinating, creative, resilient. Your music alone is worthy of study. Nothing like it exists in the cooperative. And your capacity for emotional connection. His exoskeleton shifted to a warm amber hue. Many species envy it. Then why keep yourselves hidden? Because potential isn't the same as readiness, Vrixel explained. Your species stands at a crossroads. You have the capacity for greatness, but also for self-destruction. The next century will determine which path you take. Franklin turned back to the viewport, staring down at the blue marble that was his home. And what about me? Now that I know you exist, what happens? A tense silence fell over the observation deck. That, Glornak finally said, is what we need to decide. In the White House Situation Room, President Harriet Monroe listened intently as General Wilson finished her briefing. So to summarize, Monroe said, we have a mysterious crater where a former physicist's workshop used to be, a momentary orbital anomaly that defies explanation, and gravitational readings that shouldn't be possible. Yes, Madam President, Wilson confirmed. And your conclusion is aliens. The president didn't bother hiding her skepticism. I know how it sounds, Wilson admitted, but the evidence is circumstantial at best, National Security Advisor Tom Reed interrupted. A satellite glitch and a man blowing himself up with a failed experiment doesn't constitute first contact. With all due respect, Wilson countered, the gravitational readings from that failed experiment indicate technology far beyond our current capabilities. And the timing of the orbital anomaly could be coincidental, Reed insisted. At what point do we stop calling it coincidence and start calling it correlation? Wilson challenged. The president raised a hand, silencing them both. What about Porter? Any sign of him? None, Wilson replied. The Canadians are still searching the area, but there's no body, no blood, no indication he was caught in whatever happened in that workshop. He's just gone. Monroe's expression hardened. General, what are the chances Porter was developing something he shouldn't have been, something that might have attracted attention? We have reviewed his published works, Wilson said. Most of the scientific community dismissed him as a crackpot, but his theories on gravitational manipulation were innovative. If he actually found a way to put them into practice, then we need to find him, Monroe decided, dead or alive. And we need to determine what exactly happened in that workshop. General, I'm authorizing you to assemble a special task force. Keep it small, keep it quiet. And if we find evidence of non-terrestrial involvement, Wilson asked, the president's eyes narrowed. Then we reassess. But until then, this is a scientific anomaly, not an alien encounter. Is that clear? Crystal, Madam President. Back on the distant whisper, Franklin found himself in what appeared to be a conference room, facing all four of his alien hosts. We have reached a decision, Vrixel announced, though not unanimously. Franklin straightened in his chair. And we believe you represent an opportunity, Tila said. A test case, if you will. A test case for what? For whether humanity might be ready for contact sooner than we initially calculated. Glornak explained, his tentacles gesturing excitedly. Your work on gravitational fields suggests your species may be advancing more rapidly than our models predicted. Franklin frowned. So what does that mean for me? It means, Vrixel said, that we are offering you a choice. Option 1, Drav continued. We return you to Earth with your memory of us erased. You would believe your experiment failed safely, and you managed to escape before it destroyed your workshop. You would return to your life, none the wiser. Option 2, Tila picked up. We keep you here as a consultant. You would help us understand humanity better while learning about the wider universe. But you could never return to Earth. The risk of contamination would be too great. Or option 3, Glornak finished. We return you to Earth with your memories intact, but with a mission. You would become humanity's first unofficial ambassador to the stars, preparing your species for eventual contact. Franklin's eyes widened. You'd let me remember all this? With strict conditions, Vrixel cautioned. You couldn't reveal our existence publicly. That would violate the Prime Directive and possibly trigger a panic on Earth. But you could guide humanity. Publish theories that push scientific understanding in the right direction. Encourage cooperation over conflict. Help your species mature more quickly. A shepherd, Franklin murmured. Precisely, Tila agreed. Though you would not be alone. We would provide you with a subspace communicator, disguised, of course, to maintain contact. And we would continue to monitor your progress. This is a lot to process, Franklin admitted. You have time to decide, Vrixel assured him. But not too much. Your government is already investigating your disappearance. Franklin's brow furrowed. What happens if I choose option 3, but fail? What if I can't help humanity progress? The aliens exchanged glances. Then, Vrixel said solemnly, the Prime Directive remains in effect. Earth would be classified as a protected developing world. No contact would be permitted until your species either reaches deep space travel independently or resolves its major conflicts. And if that never happens, Franklin pressed. Some species never do, Glornak said sadly. They destroy themselves before they are ready to join the stars. The weight of responsibility settled on Franklin's shoulders. How long do I have to decide? 12 of your hours, Vrixel replied. After that, we must act one way or another. The longer you are missing, the more attention your disappearance will attract. Franklin nodded slowly. I will need to think. Of course, Vrixel agreed. Drav will show you to quarters where you can rest and reflect. As Franklin followed Drav from the conference room, his mind raced with possibilities. The fate of humanity potentially rested on his decision, and he wasn't entirely sure humanity deserved salvation. 6 hours later, Franklin found himself back on the observation deck, staring at Earth. It's strange, he said, sensing Glornak's presence behind him. From up here, you can't see any borders. No nations, no territories. Just one world. A common observation among species when they first see their homeworld from orbit, Glornak noted, moving to stand beside him. Have you come to a decision? Not yet, Franklin admitted. Part of me wants to stay here to learn everything you could teach me. But another part feels responsibility to your own kind, Glornak finished. Despite their flaws. Yes. They stood in companionable silence for a moment. What would you do, Glornak? Franklin finally asked. If you were in my position? Glornak's eye stalks swiveled thoughtfully. I'm not sure I can answer that. My species evolved differently than yours. We developed collective consciousness before we developed technology. Individualism is foreign to us. Yet you seem pretty individual to me, Franklin observed. Extended contact with other species affects one's perspective, Glornak admitted. I've spent decades studying humans. Your emphasis on individual choice, on personal freedom, rubbed off, you might say. Franklin smiled. So we have influenced you too. More than you know, Glornak said softly. Your art, your music, your literature, they have spread throughout the cooperative. There are worlds where human compositions are considered the height of musical achievement. Despite the composers having died centuries ago, never knowing their work reached the stars. This revelation hit Franklin hard. We have already made a mark on the universe. Yes, just not consciously. Glornak's tentacles performed a gesture. Franklin couldn't interpret. That's what makes your species so fascinating. You accomplish so much, create such beauty, even while fighting among yourselves. Imagine what you might achieve if you were united. Franklin turned back to the viewport. That's the problem, isn't it? We can't seem to unite without an external threat. Perhaps what you need isn't a threat, Glornak suggested, but a goal, something that transcends your divisions. Franklin considered this, like joining the cooperative. Precisely, though that requires proving yourselves ready. A thought struck Franklin. Glornak, what do your people call Earth? Nexus, Glornak replied without hesitation. It means crossroads in your language. Many species have crossed the threshold between planetary civilization and cosmic community, but few have done so with your potential for both creation and destruction. And that's why you watch us, Franklin realized. Not just to determine if we are ready, but to help us get ready. The Prime Directive forbids interference, Glornak reminded him. We can only observe. Until I forced your hand, Franklin said with a wry smile. By nearly killing myself. Technically, we should have let you die, Glornak admitted. The directive is quite clear on that point. But Vrixel made a choice, a very human choice, I might add. He valued one remarkable life over rigid adherence to protocol. Franklin absorbed this, and now I have to make a choice. Yes, though I suspect you have already made it. Franklin nodded slowly. I think I have. Option 3, Franklin announced when the aliens reconvened in the conference room. I will go back with my memories intact. I will be your unofficial ambassador. Vrixel's exoskeleton shifted to a deep blue. Are you certain? The path will not be easy. You will have knowledge you cannot openly share. You will see possibilities your fellow humans cannot yet imagine. It will be lonely. I'm already lonely, Franklin said simply. At least this way, my loneliness serves a purpose. Tila leaned forward. You understand the restrictions? No direct revelation of our existence. No sharing of advanced technology before your species is ready. Your role is to guide, not to revolutionize overnight. I understand, Franklin confirmed. Evolution, not revolution. I will push the boundaries of human knowledge, but not break them completely. Then we are agreed, Vrixel declared. Drav will provide you with a subspace communicator disguised as an ordinary Earth object. It will allow you to contact us in emergencies. And what about my disappearance? Franklin asked. It's been over a day now. People will have questions. We have prepared a cover story, Tila explained. You were hiking in the woods when your experiment destabilized. The explosion knocked you unconscious. You woke disoriented and wandered for hours before finding your way back. Simple concussion symptoms will explain any inconsistencies in your story, Glornak added. Franklin nodded. And the crater where my workshop was? Unfortunate, but useful, Vrixel said. It gives your authorities something to investigate, something that will ultimately lead nowhere, but will satisfy their immediate curiosity. By the time they realize there's no conventional explanation, the incident will be old news. Unless they connect it to your orbital anomaly, Franklin pointed out. A risk we must take, Vrixel acknowledged, but one unlikely to lead to definitive proof of our existence. When do I leave? Franklin asked. Immediately, Tila replied. We have detected increased activity in your region. Military personnel are searching the area. We need to return you before they expand their search parameters. Franklin felt a sudden reluctance. Will I see any of you again? That depends on how well you succeed, Vrixel said. If humanity progresses as we hope, perhaps within your lifetime. If not, then it's on me to make sure we are ready, Franklin finished. No pressure. Glornak's tentacles performed what Franklin now recognized as their version of a laugh. You humans and your humor in the face of enormous responsibility. Truly remarkable. There is one more thing, Tila said, producing a small metallic cube no larger than a die. This contains selected knowledge. Nothing that would catastrophically advance your technology, but information that will help you guide scientific progress in productive directions. Franklin accepted the cube reverently. Thank you, all of you, for trusting me. Don't thank us yet, Vrixel cautioned. The real work begins once you return. The return to Earth was anticlimactic. One moment Franklin was standing in the distant Whispers transport room, saying his final goodbyes. The next, he was on the forest floor a kilometer from his property, the morning sun filtering through the trees. Only the weight of the communicator in his pocket, disguised as an ordinary pocket watch, and a knowledge cube hidden in his shoe convinced him it hadn't all been a dream. Franklin took a deep breath of Earth air, noticeably less pure than aboard the alien vessel, and began walking toward the road. Within 20 minutes, he encountered a military search party. "Mr. Porter?" A female officer approached him cautiously. "Franklin Porter? That's me," he confirmed, putting on his best confused expression. "What's going on? Why are there soldiers in the woods?" "Sir, I'm Brigadier General Amara Wilson, United States Space Force. We have been looking for you. There was an incident at your property." Franklin feigned shock. "What kind of incident? Is my house okay?" "The house is fine," Wilson assured him. "But your workshop? I'm afraid it's gone. There was some kind of explosion." "Oh, God." Franklin put a hand to his head. "My experiment. I was adjusting the field calibration when I noticed some power fluctuations. I went outside to check the generator, and then nothing. I must have been knocked out. I have been wandering around disoriented all night." Wilson studied him intently. "You are very lucky, Mr. Porter. Whatever happened in that workshop created a perfectly circular crater 5 meters deep. By all rights, you should be dead." Franklin met her gaze steadily. "Maybe the universe has other plans for me." Something flickered in Wilson's eyes. Suspicion, perhaps, or intuition. "Maybe it does. Mr. Porter, I'd like you to come with us. We have some questions about your experiment." Of course, Franklin agreed easily. "But I should warn you, General, it was all theoretical. Gravity manipulation is still considered fringe science. Most of my colleagues think I'm a crackpot." "And what do you think?" Wilson asked. Franklin allowed himself a small smile, thinking of the alien ship still orbiting silently above them. "I think the universe is full of possibilities we haven't even begun to imagine." 6 months later, Franklin Porter published a groundbreaking paper on quantum gravitational fields that sent shockwaves through the scientific community. The theories presented were revolutionary, yet just plausible enough to avoid outright dismissal. 3 months after that, he was invited to speak at the United Nations on the potential for new clean energy sources based on his work that a year later, the first international consortium for gravitational research was established, with Porter as its director. In an orbit above Earth, the crew of the distant Whisper watched with satisfaction as humanity took its first tentative steps toward new understanding of a universe. "Do you think they will be ready?" Glornak asked, standing beside Vrixel on the observation deck. "Not today," Vrixel replied. "Not tomorrow, but someday. Thanks to one human who reached for the stars and, against all protocol, was caught before he fell. So we maintain the Prime Directive," Tila concluded, joining them. "With one small modification," Vrixel said, his exoskeleton shifting to a proud violet. "We no longer just observe. Now we guide, from the shadows through Porter. Evolution, not revolution." Drav, monitoring Earth communications as always, looked up from his station. "Porter is requesting contact. Should I put him through?" Vrixel nodded. "By all means. Our ambassador has work to do." As Franklin Porter's voice filled the observation deck, the aliens listened to his latest progress report with growing hope. The Prime Directive remained in effect, but perhaps, just perhaps, humanity would be ready to join the stars sooner than anyone had predicted, and all because one alien commander couldn't bear to watch a brilliant mind vanish in a gravitational implosion. Sometimes, Vrixel reflected, breaking the rules was the only way to fulfill their spirit. That, too, was a very human lesson. Perhaps they were learning from each other after all.